Hello and welcome to my studio. I'm Jessie and this is the Knit Up and Dye podcast, episode 76, Matters of Size and Ambiguity. As always, I'm going to start with my special thank yous to all of my subscribers, new and ongoing. I love you guys. What you see here is really all about you, and I'm always looking to hear your questions, your comments, your ideas, and what you'd like to see discussed or demonstrated. Reach out to me. I'm here for you. Hello and welcome to Susan, Susanna, and Josephine. You guys are wonderful. Thank you for adding me to your lives. Special love and thanks go out to Teresa, Lemore, Tiffany, Adriana, Wayne, Sonia, Patricia, Lisalete, Cappy, Kath, Bente, Christy, Neetsy, Charlotte, Chris, Roseanne, Linda, Marie, Eve, David, Donna, Betty Ann, Scott and John, Carolyn, Kate, and Terry over at Unwound, Bex, Nancy, and Rachel. If I didn't say your name, it doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means I didn't add you to the list. I don't know why. Maybe I haven't heard from you in a while. Maybe I forgot. I love you no matter what. A warm hello and thank you go out to all of my patrons. You don't know what your support means. It is everything. Thank you. And a very special thank you go out to my test knitters, my army. You guys are fantastic and I appreciate your work so much. Betty Ann, Debbie, Neetsy, Linda, Teresa, and Linda, you are my inspiration and my safety net. Thank you. So, I'm going to start with my life segment. You get to hear my drama. Woo! I have been knitting. I've been knitting rather frantically on a new design, and I will talk about that. We'll get there. But last night I knit for so long. I was so tired. We actually have a remote for one of the lamps that I use for my knitting, and when I got up to go to bed last night, I randomly grabbed my Roku remote and pointed it at the lamp repeatedly, and it didn't work. And I even looked at the remote to see if I was hitting the right button and did it again, and still that lamp would not turn off. Clearly I had knit past wakeful usefulness. I did check my work this morning, and it was okay. We're continuing, sadly, I'm so tired, we're continuing to have coffee appliance drama. I don't know what's going on. I am not in control of the coffee in our household. In fact, I can't make a cup of coffee. I'm coffee declined. I don't know what is wrong with it. It's simple science. You measure out coffee, you put it in the filter, you put in measured water, you press the button, coffee comes out. Not for me. It does not matter, even under supervision. Something goes horribly wrong with my coffee and it'll either come out insanely weak or so strong your hair will stand on end. I'm not allowed to make coffee. I opt not to make coffee. There are certain things that we just are not talented in and should avoid. Mine is I can't make a cup of coffee. Sadly, this means that my husband is shouldered with the duties of coffee in our household. I only have like maybe 2 cups of coffee a week, and usually it's on the weekends. I try not to take in too much caffeine. I don't drink any soda. Really, those 2 cups of caffeine I like that word, are the only caffeine I get all week long. We had a coffee maker die. That was high drama. High drama. Went out, replaced it that evening. That coffee maker has some manufactural flaws, some ticks to it that we don't particularly like. For example, the carafe has a lip in it, so no matter what you do, you cannot get all the coffee out of it. Wait, why would you design it this way? Do you not test these things? And every cup of coffee that we made out of this thing, the basket would not drain properly, the coffee grounds would flow over the lip of the basket filter, and we'd end up with crunchy coffee. Horrible. So frustrated with this, we went out and bought another coffee maker. That coffee maker has been in employ for a week now, And we have the same symptoms happening. Now, mind you, the carafe is much better. I love the carafe on this one. I can actually get all the coffee out. It has a nice wide pour lip. Beautiful. We're getting crunchy coffee still. Urgh. So we changed out the filters. We've tried, we cleaned it. We tried the trick where you flip the filter inside out so that the filter clings to the walls. None of this is working. My husband has taken on exceptionally scientific study of this. The only thing we have not tried yet is actually buying a permanent filter, one of the reusable filters, and he is stoutly refusing to. There's a stubbornness that comes into play here. So the experiment continues. We've had a couple days where the coffee maker worked perfectly fine, exactly the way a coffee maker should work. No grounds, perfect hot coffee, everything was fine. And then we have had, just when you get faith that everything is good, you fixed whatever the problem was, that you didn't know what the problem was, so you couldn't actually have fixed it, but somehow it resolved itself, so you fixed it. Then it comes right back, we have the same problems again. We don't know. I have walked away. I've washed my hands of this. I have walked away from this. This is in his realm now. He can be as frustrated as he wants. He can do whatever he wants with it. We don't know. We don't know. We can't make sense of this. We even went so far as to look at the water that we were using, the grind that we were using. We use filtered water, we use non-bleached filters, we haven't changed the grind of the coffee, it's the same coffee, we're still using the same coffee. I don't know, I don't know. So, I've walked away from this. This weekend has been hot, crazy hot. Our temperatures had been modulated back down into the mid-90s for the past week. All of a sudden we're back up over 100 degrees again. I died yesterday, literally and figuratively. I was dyeing yarn yesterday, and I had the oven on, and I had the stovetop on, and I had boiling wool, and I had baking wool, and it was a very, very warm day. Surprisingly, you would think that when you're cooking yourself in that manner that you would lose weight. You actually retain more water and gain weight. It's the weirdest. What a strange world we live in. We have some forest fires far to the north of us. We are in a very safe area. Unfortunately, with the weather pattern what it is right now, all the smoke is drifting down into the valley. So our air quality here has been lowered significantly. I have lowered visibility when I look out over the view that we have. Our visibility is down under a mile sometimes. It's a sad thing to see forests burn. It is part of the circle of life. It is something that you need. Fire rejuvenates. Fire puts minerals back into the ground, into the water. It provides for new growth. It's part of the cycle of life, and it's a really hard thing to accept. And a lot of people really struggle with it, but I get it. Were my house burning down, I wouldn't get it. Absolutely not. And I am very sympathetic for the people that are displaced during forest fires. I'm very sympathetic for people that suffer huge, huge devastating loss when they lose their homes and all their memories and everything. But fire is important. And I'm actually... This particular fire was caused by a lightning strike. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's not affecting any homes that I'm aware of at this point. It is affecting some deep wood camping, but so far everybody's safe, everybody's good. I'm actually disappointed that the fires are coming so late in the season because peas grow really, really well in carbonated air. Whenever we have forest fires in the past that were early in the spring, my peas grew gangbusters and we had beautiful peas and beans. For some reason, they really like smoke. We obviously could have artificially provided them smoke. Unfortunately, the mice got to our our peas specifically this year before any of the forest fires hit, so they didn't have the growth spurt before the mice could get to the seeds and everything. So I'm bummed. I'm sad that the fires, they cause work and affect people, and when it's really hot like this, there's nothing worse than trying to fight a fire, and I have great sympathy for, and thanks for the firefighters that are keeping the people safe in these situations and unfortunately putting themselves in harm's way to do so. What else this week? This week I also purchased a new journal. It's a really cool journal. Let me lunge and grab. It's not a journal, like I didn't buy a diary. This is a incubator. It's called a hatch journal. You can get them online. I got mine through Amazon. No, I did not Prime shop. I happened to find it on Amazon. I don't remember if it was before or after. But this was actually booted off of a Kickstarter. And it's really quite wonderful. I'm trying to see if I can see the company that did this so that you could go directly to their website. Of course, I'm not seeing it quickly. But a hatch journal is, it was designed to help you brainstorm ideas, and that's in one section. And then you list all of your cool ideas. Whether they're good or bad, doesn't matter. And then there's an incubation section where there's a form page set up where you can break down your idea, see what's involved before you implement it, what do you need to do. And then if it passes that test in your little process, there is actually a hatch section where you get to do everything to launch that idea, to make that idea work. I think this is going to be really fun to work with. It's a really neat concept for how to bring your ideas to fruition. Even the bad ones can be a jumping off point for something else. And that's the whole point of this, is that you have a list of both your good and your bad ideas so that they can inspire something else later on. I bought two. I bought two of them. One very much with the mind that it was going to be for my group and community projects where I do things like the Ornament Exchange. And the other one being very much for my design ideas, because I have so many ideas flowing through that not all of them get the time and attention that they need, and some of them get lost in the fray, and some of them get way more attention than they should. And this helps you kind of sort that out. Very excited. I'll talk more about these as I implement them. Definitely check it out. If you just do a Google search for a hatch journal, it'll come right up, and I'm quite sure that in the editing process I'll add the company name, website, that sort of information for you here. Really like the idea of this. Let me see how that works, and I'll let you know. What triggered that? Why? Because middle of the night, the other night, I had an idea about something that I wanted to do with and for the group, and my husband had already teased me this week about ideas that I had lost because I had failed to write them down, that fortunately he remembered. He's there for me. He's got my back. But I grabbed a notebook and I flung it open, clicked on the light, blinded everybody, grabbed a notebook, grabbed a pencil, and went to write it down. And the page that I happened to open up to had a sketch of another shawl design that is probably on paper now some 3 years and hasn't been touched. These things get lost. I was elated. I was excited. There it is. Suddenly my mind is churning on this idea while I'm scratching down this other idea. And I was depressed. I'm like, opportunity lost. I could have been working on this all this time. It could have already been out there. Who knows? And the point of writing down your idea at night is to set it aside so that your mind is empty so you can go to sleep. That didn't work. Totally didn't work. Because I had found this, it immediately triggered my creative mind, and my creative mind started to problem solve to see, why didn't this go into fruition? Why didn't this go further? Why did I set this aside? And although the light was turned back off and I was laid back down at peace over the idea that I did capture and write down, the rest of me was churning over this other idea. And so I, at that point, said, okay, we need a better way to handle this. We need to get all these ideas into one place and not stumble on them years later and lose hours of sleep over the creative mind. My apologies. I'm going to be drinking a lot of fluid during this particular podcast because of the smoke air content. I'm breathing fine. I just can't talk for long. That, and I burned every surface of my mouth this morning on that stupid coffee with its chunks. And you know, not only is liquid coffee really hot and can burn the roof of your mouth, your tongue, granules are very, very hot, and they do not leave your mouth anywhere near as easily or as fast as the liquid coffee. And so I feel like I have little burn spots everywhere. I even ran to do that trick where you put sugar in your mouth and sugar will reverse a burn if you get there really fast. Didn't. Ugh. Cheers. Happy mornings. Alright, so that's my blah 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 about my life. Let's move on. I had acquisitions this week. I have to blame someone, and therefore I am going to blame someone. LeeAnn. I regard LeeAnn as a friend. I've met LeeAnn through my podcast. I've met wonderful people through this podcast. I met you through this podcast, and I love this. I met LeeAnn through this podcast, and LeeAnn has been a source of strength and humor and love, and she has just been wonderful. Y'all are. I couldn't ask for a better group of people. I couldn't buy a better group of people. LeeAnn is also evil, and I'm talking just evil. She recently started a podcast. And being the supportive friend that I am, I plunked down at lunch the other day at work and I plugged her in and I sat there and I watched her very first podcast, which was fantastic. She's wonderful. She's entertaining. She's engaging. She's intelligent. She offers information, and she is a vicious temptress. She's a yarn dyer, and you've already seen some of her yarns. She is the talent behind Southern Colonial Dyeworks. And she did her podcast, and part of her podcast, very much like mine, is here are my yarns. And this is, you know, this is what I was aiming for. This is what I got. Isn't this beautiful? Her yarn presentation was so good that I hit pause. I clicked over to her Etsy shop. I hit buy now, and then I hit play again. Oh, because I need yarn desperately. I have no yarn. I'm in a desperate situation. I must buy yarn. I purchased 2 skeins of LeeAnn's yarn. She is Southern Colonial Dyeworks. She dyes small batches in Alabama, and they are phenomenal. They are phenomenal. This one is Iris. It is on her Dogwood Tweed sock base. It is 85% superwash blue face Leicester or Leicester. Eve, you're going to be my source. Is it Leicester with a long I or Leicester with a short E? Correct me, please. I honestly don't know, and I'm quite sure if I'm saying Leicester, it's either very wrong or very right. Somebody step forward. Long I, short E, somebody tell me. Either way, this is Iris. It's 15% of those little nylon noops, the little nylon inclusions that they spin in, and these are colored. They're in blacks and grays and browns. They're lovely. Greens and blues and purples, and I am smitten. I'm just smitten. 438 yards over 100 grams. This is a fingering weight. This will make a lovely pair of socks or a shawl or a scarf, or I can double it up with some. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I simply needed it. That wasn't the one that she presented in the podcast. That's the one that I added. It fell into my shopping cart when I went over there. This is the one she presented. It's called Firepit. It's on the exact same base. It has gorgeous grays, light all the way through a dark, and then these beautiful little dashes of brown, orange, and red. Very autumnal, very, very me. I love this. It is sooty and flamey and coaly, and it is a campfire. It is beautiful. It's beautiful. Had to have it. Had to have it. She was there on her podcast and she was talking about this yarn, and pause, buy, play. Thank you. You people are dangerous. So these were my acquisitions this week. Go check out her podcast. Be warned, you're going to end up buying something. But her podcast is fantastic, and she's fresh out of the gate. She did say that she was going to be doing it on Instagram TV. She had made every attempt to get there with her first episode and ended up publishing to YouTube. Doesn't matter. There she is. If you connect to her on Instagram, I'm pretty sure that her link in her profile will take you to all of her stuff. So definitely check that out. Love it, love it, love it. Knitting progress. I have been knitting like crazy this week. I've actually been working during my commute and my lunch times. I worked very much on my Squircle socks, and I am about 75% done with the second sock. And let's pull that up for you. I just have to do a little bit of foot and the toe out through here. I love these, and I got them to match so close. They are so close to matching. Let's see if I can line these up for you. Of course, I'm showing the side that shows that they clearly do not match all the way. But they're very close, and I'm very, very happy. Yes, this is very OCD. I'm very OCD. I'm okay with that. I love them, and I love this pattern. The pattern is free on Ravelry. It's by General Hogbuffer. I love the name. I have no idea what that person's history is, but it does the coolest heel. This looks way more complicated than it is. It really does. It does this super cool squaring while you're knitting in the round. If you've ever knit a sock with a heel flap, same thing, same thing. Except instead of your heel flap being over half of the stitches, it's only over 6 stitches. And it's a little bit longer to make the gusset a little bit longer. And the gusset has an increase at the heel. Instead of doing kind of a short row heel, it's done in the round. So it increases down here while it's doing a center double decrease kind of a thing here. Trust the pattern. The pattern is exquisite. If you do a 64 stitch, the pattern is going to be super, super clear for you. If you do a slightly bigger or larger sock, all the instructions are there to do the math. They're all right there for you. And then it just goes back down into your classic decrease and toe. It is a free pattern. I'm not spoiling anything by giving that away by telling you that. I am encouraging everyone to give this one a go, because it'll open your mind and it'll change how you think about socks. It may be a better fit for you, especially if you're somebody with a high instep like I am. And they're fun. They make the coolest use of self-striping yarns. Absolutely just the coolest use of them, because it really shows off those stripes for you. Love this pattern. Can't obviously talk enough about this pattern. This is the second time I've done them. The first time I did them while I was teaching myself the Portuguese knitting technique, and I actually reverse engineered the entire pattern and knit it inside out to make use of how easy purling is in Portuguese. It can be done. It's not that complicated a pattern. You can readily make modifications to it. If you have questions about it, reach out to the designer. All of us designers on Ravelry are there for you. Your successful completion of our designs is everything to us. We love that, and we're going to do everything we can to help you. I have not reached out to this particular designer. I would assume that they are like-minded. It would be odd not to be. And if you simply aren't getting a hold of that person, reach out to me and I'll do everything I can to answer based on my experience with that pattern. I also did a little bit of work on my Venetian Dream sweater. I refer to it as my memoir sweater. I am still on the first sleeve. I think I have a couple more decreases before I get into the lace. It's been set aside because, you know, shiny and other. But I'm really trying to get that done before fall. I really am. In my head only though. Apparently you have to actually use your hands, and I will get back there, I promise. So the Farmhouse Shawl. It is in test knitting, and I am so proud of my test knitters. I have had great suggestions come through both via email and through the test knitting thread. Feel free to drop into the test knitting thread. Take a look. You don't have to be a test knitter to participate in there. You're welcome to come in and ask questions. The test knitting thread is open over on Ravelry, and we're starting to see pictures. We're starting to see discussion about mods that we can make to the pattern to make it even easier to use. And I've had really fantastic suggestions. All along, I had done the Farmhouse Shawl as part of my design along. I'm having a design along over on another thread on Ravelry under this group, under my Knit Up and Dye podcast group. You are welcome to join. Our theme is connection, and however connection, whatever connection means to you. You're welcome to do a theme completely of your own. The theme is merely a dropping in point. It's open to knit and crochet, any project of your own design. It doesn't have to be a finished pattern or design or saleable thing when you're done. You only have to finish an object that you've designed. It can be a modification of an existing pattern, but I do ask that you please heavily modify. Make it your own. Make it your own. A question recently came up, can I double dip? Can I participate in a different design along and your design along at the same time? Absolutely, absolutely. I don't have rules like that. Come participate. The design along will close September 1st. We're at the end of July. We got a month. We're good. We've got time here. I think we have 5-6 weeks left. We can do this. My Farmhouse Shawl is done. The pattern is in testing, but I like a challenge, and so I determined that I was going to do both a 2 and a 3 color version of the Farmhouse Shawl. I have completed all the math. I have the pattern all but written, and I am starting to knit my sample of Barn Dance. Barn Dance is going to be the name of the 3 color version. I had initially thought that I was going to hire a sample knitter for me. I'm too much of a micromanager still. I really wanted to do that because I thought I was going to be able to punch out a 3rd design in this time frame, and I'm backing off. I'm going to back off from that. The other design is likely to come along. I've put it on the back burner for a little bit here because I really want to get Barn Dance out and get it done right. It took a lot of math to add a 3rd color. It took a lot of graphing. I employed my Excel skills, and I actually know exactly how many stitches occur in each color to make sure that there was going to be enough yardage over a fingering weight skein so that everybody could accomplish this and nobody would run short. Lot of math. A lot of math. But then there was another consideration that I really hadn't taken into account. So the Farmhouse Shawl, fortunately I have right here, is done in a contrasting color. It looks better with a contrast simply because we got stripes, and you want those stripes to show up from a distance. You're showing off your knitting. You're showing off your skills. You may be showing off a yarn. Having a high contrast really makes it punch. Adding a 3rd color adds a whole new contrast challenge where you need to make sure that not only does these 2 colors contrast with each other so that you can see both of them, but that the 3rd color contrasts with both of the others. So you end up with a scale. You end up with a very dark color, very light color, and then a medium color. And you have to get them so that you can differentiate the colors from each other. The easiest and best way to handle that, if you're in that situation, if you're trying to sort out colors, if you're trying to make sure that your colors either blend nicely or contrast nicely, is to take a photo, set it over to the black and white filter, and see if you can tell the difference between the yarns. That black and white filter immediately shows you contrast. If you've got high contrast, you're going to be able to see the stripes from a distance. If you have low contrast, you're not going to be able to see the stripes from a distance. They're going to blend into each other. So, this has been through so many iterations. And I'm just going to run my mouth off the top of my head about the thought process and what happens in designing this. So, my initial thought was, this is going to be great. It's always where you start. This is going to be great. I'm going to use the exact same yarns that I used in this one. And I'm going to add that third color in there. And that way you'll be able to really see the difference between the 2 color and the 3 color. Makes sense, right? Good marketing. And then I swatched. And I looked at my third color against my first color, and I couldn't see the stripes. I could see them here, but I couldn't see them here. Never mind there. Snapped a photo, could barely tell there were stripes. I didn't have enough contrast. Okay, throw the baby out with the bathwater. I need a different color. So then I started playing with the colors, and I started looking at making sure that I had 3 colors that showed enough contrast. And that meant changing the third color, and then I had 3 colors that I was working with, and I swatched that out, and that didn't work. And then I changed out the second color, and I swatched that out, and I didn't like it. And round and round this went. I have knit so many little mini swatches, and I have taken so many photos of little mini swatches just to see the colors next to each other. Because it's one thing to see the colors side by side in bunches like this. It's a whole nother thing to see those colors side by side in this. It's about the scale of your project. It's about the scale of their presentation in the project. And the only way to get that was to to swatch. You know what I'm talking about. So I went around and around and around. I wound up so much yarn. Because I'd have the hank there, and I'd like the hanks next to each other. Oh yeah, those coordinate. I really like that. I can do it in that. And throw it on the umbrella and twist that all up, cake that all up, sit down, knit a swatch that's 2 by 2, snap a photo of it and go, and run back into the studio and put another hank on and wind the... My shoulder hurts from twisting up cakes. In the end, where am I? Where did I end up? I ended up with the same 2 yarns that are in the original one and a third color. Which is exactly where I wanted to be, where I started, just not the third color that I anticipated, not the third color that I thought I wanted to use. It's lovely. I'm very excited about it. I've cast it on. I'm working it. The new sections that I've included are I'm reaching those sections. The new striping has come in. It is going to be very, very reminiscent of Farmhouse, but Barn Dance definitely has its own flavor to it, and I am super excited. If you follow me on Instagram, you're going to start seeing photos as this develops. I'm loving it, and the colors, yes, I know, I'm very autumnal. I love my browns and oranges. They flatter me, they look good on me. I'm knitting it, I'm going to wear it. We're going to start there. But there will obviously be other colors available. My test knitters have all knit this in, they're all, like, I think 4 of my test knitters are working Farmhouse in a beautiful violet and silver. And it's gorgeous. Just not the colors I ever consider. I love it. I love how we get to put our own spin and our own personality and our own fashion sense into our knitting. That is so cool. That is so cool. So I'm doing it exactly in the same colors that I did the initial one in, with 1/3 color, so that you can really compare the patterns and see which one you want to knit. I'm making good progress. It's coming along very quickly. In fact, the majority of this was knit this weekend. So I'm in good shape. And I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I am looking for Brave Souls who are interested in test knitting barn dance. There is a thread that I've just opened up over on Ravelry. You're welcome to pop in. Obviously, I don't have a finished picture of it. You gotta be brave. But like I said, it'll be very reminiscent of the Farmhouse Shawl, and it is a 3-color. I also feel, and this is me harking back to the sample knitter. Why didn't I use a sample knitter? A, because clearly I had some issues I had to work out with my colors. And B, this is a design along. And although I'm not capable of winning the prizes of my own design along, because that would be just cheeky, the rule that I put out there was that you just had to finish an object. I said you had to finish an object. I didn't say you had to hire somebody to finish an object. And I feel like in the theme, in the theory, in the thread of this, it's more appropriate that I knit the thing myself. And so that's what I'm doing. Moving on. So, yes, my acrylic socks, my Daylin sweater, my How to Eat an Elephant blanket, they're all camping. My timeout pile includes my Ships Ashore on fingering. It's that green one. Y'all have encouraged me that I need to keep knitting that green. I'm seriously considering it. The Duchess of Santa Fe, that's that big gold wrap that I was working on. My Overflow shawl and my Fox Paws shawl or scarf, they are all in timeout. I got other things I got to work on. And I still have one pattern that is missing, and I just need to declare it dead. I don't know where it is. So, that's all the catch-up and all the usual blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about this week's title and theme. Matters of Size and Ambiguity. I received a question this week, and it was meant to be a question for my next live episode. I'm supposed to be having a live episode next Saturday. I'm very sorry. I have canceled that. I have other life events that are happening that I did not think were going to happen next weekend. Scheduling has changed, and so I will not be available next week. Because of that, I'm running my mouth extra long this week, and we're going to address this week. I think it's a great question. It's a great couple of questions, and I really want to kind of get this discussion opened up so that it is something that we can discuss in future live episodes. And certainly get y'all thinking and get you asking your questions about this, because although it seems like a rudimentary question, it is a very valuable question. It's a very important question. I did not get permission today to call out my questioner, so I'm not going to, but I want to thank that person. You are very important to me. Thank you. The question was, it started based on, I'm a long-time knitter. I've been knitting basically for as long as I've been alive. And the questioner, not myself, obviously I haven't knit that long. Toddler with needles, terrifying idea. So this person has been knitting for decades. And they wanted to know, what is the difference between the different weights of yarn? For example, DK, worsted, and fingering. And this person felt like that was kind of a silly question for an experienced knitter to ask. Not at all. It's an excellent question. It is not a beginner question. It is a heavily, heavily loaded question. In fact, it's a question that even my mother asked me recently, and she's been knitting most of my life as well. And there's a lot of reason that long-time knitters are asking these questions. It's primarily because most of the sizes that you're hearing about in your podcasts and that you're seeing in Etsy shops were not widely available commercially for the first decade or more of your knitting experience. I'm no historian. I'm not, and I did do a little bit of research into this, but believe it, I'm not an expert in the history of yarn in America. However, most of our yarn supply, most of the creation of our yarns has been based on wars and economy. Acrylic was widely available because of the war. Which one at this moment, I'm drawing an utter blank, but it is also a petroleum product. Whereas we didn't have wool, wool was being used for our military, acrylic was widely available. In the 70s and 80s, the most common commercially available yarn weights were baby, which is generally a sport weight yarn, and worsted, which ranges heavily in its size and is generally ranged anywhere from a worsted to an aran. In fact, a very large number of commercially available worsted weights are still actually technically aran weights, more so than worsted, and you'll find that in like Vanna's Choice, you'll find it in Red Heart Yarns. The majority of those are actually closer to an aran weight than a worsted weight. What does all this mean? This is very confusing. You've got all these different words and they're not connecting to each other. It doesn't make any sense. Yarn comes in a variety of thicknesses. That's what this is about, is how thick is your yarn. The finest to the largest are named in the following order. We have cobweb, which is quite literally that fine. It's like a cobweb. It is a thread. We have lace, we have fingering, we have sport, we have DK, which is an abbreviation basically for double knit. We have worsted, we have aran, we have bulky, and then there's a bunch of ambiguous titles for the trendy giant yarns. You'll see super bulky, jumbo, I think there's like mega and Goliath and I don't know, rope. God, they come up with names for these because they're not standardized yet. We're still messing around with how big a yarn can you use. Each of these are lovely titles. And of course there are variances within these titles. You've heard us bandy about things like light fingering, light worsted, heavy fingering. It just gets more and more confusing, right? There is an entity referred to, named, titled, the Craft Yarn Council. I'll have their website here for you. And they have provided us with a handy numbering system. This numbering system has been in play for a very long time. You've seen these numbers on your yarn labels. And the numbering system for each of these weights of yarn is supposed to help us get a handle on all of this. But it's even more ambiguous. In that the numbering system has a different naming system than we're already calling the yarns. For example, 0 is lace, 1 is superfine, 2 is fine, 3 is light, 4 is medium, 5 is bulky, 6 is super bulky, and 7 is jumbo. And they assign these categories to the weights, but for each of these, your yarn may apply to more than one category. For example, the weights that they listed, 3, which is light, and 4, which is medium, cover all the weights between DK and aran. So DK, worsted, and aran somehow managed to break down and fit into 2 categories. Are you confused? I am. Further, the Craft Yarn Council recognizes a gauge range for each of these numbers, and the ranges overlap each other. So we have yarns that fit into more than one category, and we have gauge ranges that overlap each other, and we have names that don't match the names that everybody's talking about. And how do I know what to use? Well, it's about gauge. It's really about gauge. For example, they suggest that using needle sizes between 3 and 5 US on a fine yarn will produce 23 to 26 stitches over a 4-inch swatch. And they suggest needle sizes 5 through 7 for a light yarn, and that'll produce between 21 and 24 stitches per inch. Again, I'm talking about overlaps here. We're talking about using a size 5 needle on each and potentially having a range of, let's see, 23 to 24 stitches on either one. What does this mean? This is crazy. The short of it is we have applied names and or numbers to a general gauge that we will get out of these yarns to help you purchase a fiber or select a pattern to reproduce the fabric that the designer made so that you can experience the similar drape, density, durability, etc. of the fabric that they aim you to recreate in order to create this pattern. It all boils down to gauge. Those damned gauge swatches are really important. Whether you're trying to figure out what color stripe to make in your shawl or you're trying to figure out what yarn to use, that gauge swatch means everything. And I hate them too. I hate them. I have knit so many gauge swatches. I think the reason that we hate them is that it works against our need for instant gratification. It works against our self-soothing. It feels like work to get to work. Or it feels like the work that holds us back from our play. The reality is that gauge swatch makes the play, makes the self-soothing so much better and so much more enduring. If I sat down and I put 120 hours into knitting this shawl and I get all done with it and I put on a nice outfit and do my hair and my makeup and I climb over the wall so I can stand in front of the nice barn fence next door and I wrap that beautiful piece of work around my neck and my husband clicks on the camera and he stands back and he snaps a bunch of photos of it and I sit down on my computer and I start to edit those photos to put them in the pattern, and you can only see 2 colors of my 3-color shawl. Poop! Why? Why? That gauge swatch saves me all of that. All that disappointment, all of that labor, all that frustration, all of that disappointment. Further, I have a different sense of control over this because I chose the yarn. I played with the gauge until I got what I wanted for this design. However, once I publish my pattern and I put it up on Ravelry for you, and you go, oh, I want that shawl, and you go stash diving and you pull out 3 skeins of yarn that you love together, will they work? Is that the right yarn for this project? How do I know? That's what these names and all of these gauges and all of these weight numbers are supposed to help you sort out. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to help you recreate the same fabric. Really is what's happening here. If you're using the exact same yarn, you still may not get the same fabric. And that's where it gets really, really frustrating. You have to remember that 2 knitters using the exact same size needles and the exact same yarn will still produce different fabrics. It depends on their knitting technique, it depends on their stress level, it depends on their muscle tone, it depends on their experience. You need to do what you love. If it makes your heart sing, if you're going to be proud as punch wearing that, if it's going to be durable and lovely, do it. Do it. There are no knitting police that I'm aware of. And if there are, they're quite desperately trying to contact YouTube to knock down my door because I break rules all the time. And so should you. So what is the best way to use? This is a great question, and it's a difficult one to answer. It's as difficult to answer as the meaning of life. The answer is, what do you want your experience to be? If you want your experience to mimic the pattern or design, use what they used, or use as close to what they used as you can get. Compare the material, then compare the yards to the grams in your put up. For example, this is 100 grams. It has 438 yards. You could readily use a skein of yarn that only had 430 yards at the put up, or only had 444 yards in the same put up. It's going to be a slight variance. Work your gauge. Do you love it? It's good enough. Is it a little off? Change your needle. Is it still good? You're fine. Go forward. Material will always be the first consideration when you're trading out yarns, because different materials weigh different amounts, especially over 100 grams. And that weight difference will affect the yardage. That's why I'm saying 100 grams. Maybe it's only 120 yards. That 18-yard difference may be just in the material. The size of the actual yarn may be exactly identical. It's about the material, and the material will affect your drape. Sorry, I'm catching up my notes because I'm running my mouth. Otherwise, knit up a gauge swatch, compare the density, compare the drape and movement. You can get 5 stitches per inch out of any weight of yarn. Keep that in mind. When you have a gauge measure and they're saying 6 stitches per inch, whatever, you can get that out of any weight of yarn. The difference is 5 stitches in a cobweb weight will look like a spider web, and 5 stitches per inch in a bulky will look like a life vest. Do what makes your heart sing. This opens a huge discussion, and I am sure I have confused you to death. It's a wonder I got through that pile of notes with any sense in my head as to what's going on. It's very hard to have a set size for each of these yarns, especially when you take into consideration that these are organic materials, organic being living at some point. It's very easy to have a very set size when it's a petroleum product or a plastic, because it's man-made and man can put things into specifications. But when it's growing on the back of an animal or it's growing in a field and then plied together, even with machines, moisture, humidity, ply, how tightly it was spun, all these things cause the variances that you experience between light fingering, heavy fingering, decay. These names are just supposed to give you an idea, a rough range of what these things are. You can modify any pattern to be done in a different weight. It's going to change the look of it, the feel of it, the density of it, the drape of it. It's going to change all the fabric characteristics. That doesn't make it wrong, it makes it yours. Do what you love. Please ask your questions. Please come forward. Tell Jessica she's wrong, that these were commercially available in other weights and that she's not a good historian. She's happy to fold to that. But ask your questions and let's open this discussion so that everybody is more confident in what these ambiguous terms mean and how to select the right thing. There are certain projects that lend themselves to certain weights of yarn. I would not particularly make a pair of socks out of a bulky weight yarn. They make great bed slippers. Absolutely, they would be thick and squishy and lovely. Would they fit in my shoes? Nope. To that end, I wouldn't try to make a hat out of a lace weight. You could use several lace weights held together, which technically then would be a thicker yarn. But a very, very fine yarn would have to be knit very, very fine needles to get the density of fabric necessary for that to be a warm or useful item. Each one of them has its duty, but that doesn't mean you can't vary between them. So now I'm going to move on to other ambiguities. I had another really great question this week, and it came out of my test knitters. You know, I really ought to look at how I worded it so that I can answer this with some intelligence. Bear with me just a moment while I research my own pattern, because these things go through tech and then things change and you may not necessarily remember exactly what was said. Ah, I do. Okay. So, in patterns that are knit in multiple directions, there is, in multiple directions, or if you're adding something onto a pattern, There are two terms that are used interchangeably for when you pick up stitches along an edge. And I just used one of the terms. I said pick up stitches. The other term is pick up and knit. These two terms are being used really interchangeably by designers. And that interchange is causing confusion among knitters. And this is, it causes not only confusion but frustration. And it's one of these things that we kind of need to clean up so that people aren't frustrated or aren't avoiding patterns to avoid the ambiguity. I know that there are a lot of knitters out there who will tell you that they will not knit a heel flap sock because they hate picking up stitches. You're missing out on a great sock, and it's easy to do. My pattern actually has a large pickup of stitches just as part of the cast on, and 5 of you just ran out of the room screaming, "I'm never doing it." Please don't. Take every pattern as a new learning opportunity. Pick up and pick up and knit are used interchangeably. Why? Because it was understood that a confusion was happening with the term pick up that was causing knitters a lot of frustration. So we started saying pick up and knit to get the same result, but to cut the confusion. And in cutting the confusion, we doubled it. Don't you love language? Language is supposed to help people communicate, and yet it causes bigger problems. So let's look at this. Pick up stitches was being confused as only putting the needle into the existing fabric and lifting a strand. And no further action was happening after that, lifting of the strand. This puts a ton of tension on that original piece of fabric because you're shoving a needle into a pre-existing fabric and pulling. And you're leaving all of this on there. And over the side seam of something or over a length of fabric, that puts a ton of tension on those, and it pulls the yarn out of all the rest of the body of fabric to make room for that needle. It also doesn't take the yarn with the needle, unless you started from the far end and then came back and then knit across that. That was what was happening, was people were just picking up in the fabric and they weren't taking the yarn with them. So we started to say, pick up and knit. This instruction was to say, lift a stitch with your needle, wrap the yarn around, draw through. You're knitting one stitch in something you've lifted up. And that takes the tension off of the fabric because you're doing one of these at a time. You're lifting, pick up, and knit, and you've done that stitch. I'm going to turn the camera around briefly, and I'm going to show you why we changed the language. I'm going to show you the wrong way, and I'm going to show you the right way. How you do it. If it accomplishes the end product, good enough. This is designed to make it easier for you so that you understand what I'm trying to convey and how you can do this with the least effort possible. Let's take a look. Alright, I have a knitted piece of fabric here. And I'm going to make this my right hand needle, and this is my left hand needle. I have an edge here that I would like to pick up the stitches along. When we were saying pick up, this was being misconveyed as inserting the needle from the far end, see if I can do this, and just picking up all of these edge stitches here. See how I'm already struggling with this? Let's see if I can do it with 2 needles. Lifting these stitches and inserting the needle. And this puts an ungrateful amount of strain on this fabric, and these stitches get tighter and tighter as I borrow these yarns across this fabric. Oh my goodness. This is work, and this would make me hate picking up stitches. But this is what was happening, was people were picking up stitches, causing all this strain, fighting to get this needle in, and then knitting across this. Too much work, too much hassle, too hard on the fabric. See if I can get that fabric to recover from that strain. It's awful. Instead, what we started to say was pick up and knit. What this meant was insert your needle into the next one, wrap, and draw through. That's our pick up and our knit. It's so much easier. We're only straining this stitch for a very short period of time while we draw that yarn through and pick up the stitch that we want to pick up. Much easier, much softer on the fabric, much less strenuous on our hands, our needles. So much easier to do. Insert the needle in, wrap the yarn around. Of course, I'm doing it very difficult here. There we go. And draw that through. Oh, and I dropped it. That's your pick up and knit. I did this all in one color. And that can be confusing as well because you can't see quite what I did. So I'm going to rip this back and I'm going to employ a contrast color, mostly contrasting. I haven't done my black and white photo, but this will help you to better see what's actually happening here. So the pickup is going to be in the beige yarn. There's my pickup. My knit is going to be in this coral. The knit is happening. It doesn't need to be picked up like this and then knit, and that's causing some confusion as well. There are some people who are misconstruing, they're trying to make it harder than it actually is, and they're thinking that they're supposed to pick up the stitch and then knit it. You're actually adding a second row when you do that, and you're causing a stacking of stitches that will eventually create holes along that fabric, and I'm going to try to demonstrate that for you. It may not show up well on this camera. But if you pick up and then you knit, you end up with a stacking of stitches that's not necessary. These are my pick up and knits. These are my pick up knits and knits. It is such a simple term, it's such a simple concept that we have made it much, much harder than it needs to be. If you have questions about picking up stitches, please write to me, email me, comment on this video. Let's discuss this. Picking up stitches should be a joy. It should be something that you love to do, not a reason to avoid patterns. And if you catch yourself avoiding any pattern for any reason, because the technique just isn't working for you or you don't understand what's being conveyed, reach out to somebody. We are a very generous community and we will help each other through these patterns and give you a technique that you will use for years to come and make wonderful, beautiful things with. All right, so let's discuss upcoming events. These are really exciting. I'm very briefly going to touch on the community mixer. This is going to kick off in August. This is very much like a pen pal swap where you're each going to have an opportunity to buy a skein of yarn. It'll be a fingering weight yarn in a colorway that you love, and whoever buys the matching yarn, I'll only be dyeing 2 skeins of each color, is your new best friend, and we're going to swap out some contact information, and you guys will have something in common to introduce each other through and meet each other and maybe find a new friend. That's coming in August. September, I will be at Unwound in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm very excited about that. I'm pulling together all kinds of plans and ideas. We are in communication, me and the shop, and I'm all booked and ready to go. There's going to be a dye class, and I need to really pull that together. I'm excited about that. You're going to have the opportunity to dye a sock blank with me right there in the shop. Can't wait, can't wait. Certainly if you are in the La Crosse, Wisconsin area, September 20th through 23rd, please, please try to make plans to come out and meet me. I would love to meet you in person. There's going to be a number of events, and it would be so cool to sit down with you and hang out for a bit. Very, very excited about our ornament exchange. Yes, I know it is too early to talk about Christmas. Absolutely. It is 102 degrees out right now. The thought of it, ugh. But the thought of it, this ornament exchange is going to be so cool, so fun, so personal and heartwarming, and I'm in love with the idea of it, and I am so encouraged and so in love with the response that I've gotten. Please, if you are interested, now is your time to step forward. The registration will be open until, I don't have it down here, it's September. I will put information here. It is a go. What we're doing is we're asking anybody who's interested in participating. There is a $7 participation fee that covers your shipping and packaging for the ornaments that are coming back to you. What we're asking you to do is hand make 6 ornaments. 6, that's it. Knit, crochet, any fiber related thing that you want, but make a little Christmas ornament. Put a tag on it, just saying who it's from. If you want to include more information than that, you are welcome to. If you would like to add other little gifts to go with your ornament, it is not required. It is an option. You're welcome to do that as well. Just put them in little baggies so that I know what you want to have go with your ornament. Please don't wrap your ornaments. I need to be able to see what's going on so that I don't make mistakes. I want to make sure everybody gets it. But what's going to happen is everybody's going to send 6 ornaments to me. I'm going to swap them all around. And everybody's going to get 6 different ornaments back. All up in a nice box. And it's all going to come back to you by the end of November so that you have time to put up your tree whenever you put up your tree with these handmade wonderful bits of crafting from your knit community. I love this. This is so heartwarming. This is so exciting. Please pop on over to dyemonkeyyarns.com. Click on the Ornament Exchange page. Registration is there. Details are there. I also have a thread over on Ravelry where there's more information. You're welcome to post teaser pictures of the ornaments that you're creating. Nobody knows what they're going to receive. They can all just sit back and wish that that's going to be on their tree or be inspired to make something themselves. I have a bundle set up over there where it has all kinds of free patterns. I specifically chose free. I do not want this to be cost inhibitive. This should be scraps of yarn that you have lying around. This should be patterns that you enjoy creating to give. This should be an expense of time and $7 for shipping back to you. That's it. And heart. Make these things with love. That energy attaches to your items and it is perceived. It is known. Christmas isn't a big thing for me. It's not. It hasn't been for a long time. I live very separately from my family. It's just my husband and I here. We generally don't bother with a tree. We don't decorate. We don't really even celebrate. This is everything. This is a connector. This is a reason for a tree. This is something that I can look at all season long and think of the person who crafted it. This is a jumping off point for me to communicate with that person. This is a connection, a sense of caring, a sense of belonging. This is a warmth that is lost in our society right now, that is lost in this day and age, where we are so busy honking horns and making rude gestures and jumping to assumptions and speaking ill of our neighbors, or assuming that these things are happening to us, directed to us, and feeling bad about our position in our community or society or our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our health, all these things. This is that window where we stop beating each other up, where we stop beating ourselves up, and we share something with meaning. We share something with love. And I am so in love with this idea. This ornament exchange just warms every last deep dark corner of my heart. It even reaches where the coffee grounds got to. Please, if you're considering it, jump in. I have a number of people who have already very generously said not only are they going to make the 6 ornaments, but they're going to make extra ornaments. Why extra ornaments? Everybody is going to get 6. Everybody that sends 6 gets 6. However, you're packing it all up. You're all excited. You've made 6 ornaments. You're sending them in. You're going to do this exchange. And the dog walks by and he bumps the table. And one ornament falls off and either becomes a cat toy, a dog snack, gets dirty, gets soiled, gets damaged. Your heart's broken. Send the 5. That's what these angel knitters are for. That's what these angel crocheters are for. Their extra contribution is going to cover that loss. It's going to cover that mistake. It's going to cover the damage. It's going to cover the run out of time where you really only got 5 done. And I don't want you to sit back and think that you're not worthy, or that it's not good enough, or that you didn't fulfill it, so therefore you shouldn't participate. I want you to go, I made these with love, and there are angels out there that are going to cover me, and my love is still going to get out to at least 5 people. That's it. We have a safety net in place for life and reality. Please, if you're even remotely considering it, ask questions, talk to me, and let's see if this is something that'll work for you and be a part of this very heartwarming event. Moving on. So I spoke last week, I did list last week that I'm doing these YouTube live events. I love them. I love them. I listed times and dates for the next one. The next one is supposed to be next Saturday. I have canceled that. I did say that earlier this episode. I just want to be very clear. Next weekend there will not be a podcast. There will not be a live event. I will be back the weekend after, as it'll be a very important drawing. That will be a very important podcast. The word drawing slipped in there because it is the Patreon drawing weekend, August 4th. August 4th, right around there. Depends on what day I podcast. It's either Saturday or Sunday, but you'll be that. What is Patreon? Patreon is your way to support this and make this happen, whether it's the demos that I'm doing, the projects that we're doing, and eventually the full-length classes will be part of the Patreon program. There are some exclusive content over in the Patreon program. Please check out the website. Anybody is welcome to join at any level. All levels receive some gratitude, whether it is a gift of yarn, it is part of a drawing, or it is the exclusive content. All levels get something back, and I thank you for your support. It means everything to me. That is everything I have for you guys this week, and I am so appreciative that you keep coming back and that you're sharing me with other people, or that you're communicating with me and that we're opening discussion and enjoying not only each other's company, but the knowledge that we get from each other. That's everything. I love you guys, and I love doing this. I love being a part of this, and I thank you. Have a great 2 weeks, and I'll see you beginning of August. Bye.